Lena Morrison, 7 years old, runs barefoot through a trailer park in Bakersfield, California at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. She's clutching a plastic bag with her toothbrush and a photograph of her real mother, who died 2 years ago. Behind her, she can hear Marcus Holt shouting her name. He's her foster father, and tonight she saw something she wasn't supposed to see. Lena spots a man working on a motorcycle outside a storage unit. Wade Turner, 54. A Hells Angels member doing a late-night oil change. She grabs his arm and whispers 3 words, "Hide me, please." Wade sees the terror in her eyes and makes a decision that will unravel a trafficking ring operating through the foster care system. Within an hour, 80 Hells Angels surround Marcus Holt's house. But what they find inside isn't just about one little girl. It's evidence of 23 missing children across 3 counties. And Marcus Holt isn't working alone. Wade Turner was tightening the drain plug on his 99 Softail when he felt small fingers grab his forearm. He looked down and saw a kid, maybe 7, barefoot, her face streaked with dirt and something darker. "Hide me," she whispered. "He's coming." Subscribe and turn on notifications. This story goes somewhere you won't see coming. Trust me. Chapter 01. The storage facility off Edison Highway didn't have much traffic after 9 p.m. That's why Wade liked working on his bike there. Quiet, nobody asking questions, just him and the sound of wrenches hitting concrete. He'd been a Hells Angels member for 32 years. And in that time, he'd learned that the best conversations happened with machines, not people. It was 11:17 p.m. when the kid showed up. Wade had his head under the bike, checking for leaks, when he felt the grip on his arm. Firm, desperate. He pulled himself out and stood up, oil dripping from his fingers. The girl was small, 70 pounds maybe, brown hair tangled and falling past her shoulders. No shoes. Her feet were bleeding from running on gravel. She wore pajama bottoms with cartoon horses on them and a t-shirt 3 sizes too big. But it was her eyes that stopped Wade cold. They weren't the eyes of a kid. They were the eyes of someone who'd seen things children shouldn't see. "Hide me," she said again. Her voice was steady, but her whole body was shaking. "Please, he's gonna find me." Wade glanced past her toward the entrance of the storage complex. The gate was open. It had been broken for 2 weeks, and the owner hadn't fixed it yet. Beyond that, he could see the lights of the trailer park across the street. Someone was moving between the units, a flashlight sweeping back and forth. "Who's looking for you?" Wade asked, keeping his voice low. "Marcus. That your dad? Foster dad." She spat the words like they tasted bad. Wade had been around enough broken families to know when a kid was telling the truth. And this kid was telling the truth. He looked at his bike, then at the storage unit behind him. It was 10 by 15 feet, packed with parts and tools, and a sleeping bag he kept for nights, when he didn't feel like going home. Not ideal, but it would work. "All right," Wade said. "Get inside." The girl slipped past him into the unit. Wade followed, pulling the rolling door down, but not all the way. Left it open about 6 inches so they could see out. He grabbed a shop rag and wiped the oil off his hands, then crouched down next to her. "What's your name?" "Lena." "I'm Wade." "How old are you, Lena?" 7, almost 8. "And this Marcus, your foster dad, why you running from him?" Lena's hands twisted the plastic bag she was carrying. "I saw something." "What'd you see?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes were fixed on the gap under the door, watching for movement. Wade could hear footsteps now coming closer, heavy boots on asphalt. Then a man's voice, loud and irritated. "Lena, get your ass out here, this ain't funny." Wade put a finger to his lips. Lena nodded and went completely still. The flashlight beam swept past the storage unit, paused, then moved on. The footsteps continued down the row, fading into the distance. They waited. 5 minutes. 10. Wade's knees were starting to ache from crouching, but he didn't move. Finally, Lena spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "There were other kids." Wade's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "In the basement. 3 of them. They were sleeping on the floor. Marcus said they were his nieces and nephews visiting, but..." She looked up at Wade. They had chains on their ankles. Wade felt something cold settle in his chest. He'd seen a lot of ugly things in his life: bar fights, gang wars, people who'd sold their souls for drugs or money, but this was different. This was something worse. "You sure about what you saw?" Lena nodded. "I went down there to get my stuffed bear. I left it in the laundry room yesterday. That's when I saw them. Marcus heard me and started yelling. He said if I told anybody, he'd make sure I never saw daylight again. So I ran." Wade stood up and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts and found the name he was looking for: Razor Mackenzie, president of the Bakersfield chapter. If anyone would know what to do, it was Razor. The phone rang 3 times. "Wade, little late for a social call. I got a situation. Need the club." Razor's tone shifted immediately. "Where?" "Edison Highway Storage, Unit 47. And Razor, bring everybody." "What are we walking into?" Wade looked down at Lena, who was still clutching her plastic bag like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. "Something that needs to end tonight." "Copy that. 20 minutes." Wade hung up and knelt back down. "You did the right thing, Lena. Running, telling me. You understand that?" She nodded, but she didn't look convinced. "How long you been in that house?" 3 months. My real mum died 2 years ago, car accident. I've been in 4 different foster homes since then. Marcus seemed nice at first. He bought me ice cream and let me stay up late. But then," her voice trailed off. "Then what?" "Then the other kids started showing up and he stopped being nice." Wade heard engines in the distance, deep, rumbling Harley engines, getting closer, a lot of them. Lena's eyes went wide. "What's that?" "That's my family," Wade said, "and they're going to make sure you're safe." By 11:45 p.m., there were 37 motorcycles parked outside the storage facility. By midnight, that number had grown to 60. And by 12:20 a.m., 80 Hells Angels members were standing in the parking lot, their leather vests illuminated by the fluorescent lights overhead. Razor Mackenzie was 59 years old, built like a grizzly bear, with a scar running from his left ear to his jawline, courtesy of a knife fight in Riverside back in '94. He walked over to Wade's unit and looked down at Lena, who was sitting on a milk crate, her feet barely touching the ground. "This the kid?" Razor asked. "Yeah." Razor crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. "You're Lena, right?" She nodded. "I'm Razor. Wade called me because he trusts me to handle things the right way. You understand what I'm saying?" "I think so." "Good. Now I need you to tell me exactly what you saw. Every detail. Can you do that?" Lena took a breath and started talking. She described the basement: concrete floor, single bulb hanging from the ceiling, the smell of mildew and something worse. She described the 3 other children: a girl around 10 years old with blonde hair, a boy maybe 6 with a scar on his forehead, and another girl who looked 12 but didn't talk, just stared at the wall. She described the chains: thick, industrial, the kind you'd use to secure equipment, not people. And she described Marcus Holt, mid-40s, balding, with a tattoo of a cross on his neck and a voice that turned sweet when social workers visited, but turned to gravel when they left. Razor listened without interrupting. When she finished, he stood up and looked at Wade. "You know where this house is?" "Trailer park across the street." "I've seen the guy before. Unit 23, near the back fence." Razor pulled out his phone and made a call. "Diaz, I need you to run a name for me. Marcus Holt, Holt, lives in Kern County, probably has a record." He paused, listening. "Yeah, I'll hold." While they waited, more bikes arrived. These weren't just Bakersfield members. Razor had called chapters from Fresno, Modesto, even Sacramento. When something like this went down, you didn't ask questions. You just showed up. Razor's phone buzzed. He listened, his expression darkening. "Say that again." Another pause. "All right. Send me everything you got." He hung up and looked at Wade. "Marcus Holt, 43 years old. 2 priors for child endangerment, both dismissed due to lack of evidence. Been a licensed foster parent for 6 years. Currently has legal custody of 4 children. 4, Wade said. Lena only saw 3, which means one's unaccounted for. The implications hung in the air like smoke. Lena looked up at Razor, her voice small. "Where's the 4th kid?" "That's what we're going to find out," Razor said. He turned to the assembled riders. "Listen up. We're going to 23 Mesa Verde Drive. This is not a social call. We're not starting a fight, but we're ready to finish one. Our goal is simple. Secure those kids and hold Marcus Holt until the cops arrive. No vigilante justice. We do this clean. Understood?" A chorus of "yeah" and "copy" echoed through the lot. Razor looked at Wade. "You stay here with the girl. Keep her safe." "I want to go with you," Wade said, "and I need you here. If Marcus has friends, if this thing is bigger than one guy, I need someone I trust watching our six. That's you." Wade wanted to argue, but he knew Razor was right. He nodded. The club mounted their bikes. 80 engines roared to life simultaneously, the sound so loud it rattled the metal doors of the storage units. They pulled out in formation, 2 columns riding tight, their headlights cutting through the darkness like a convoy heading to war. Wade watched them go, then looked down at Lena. "You hungry?" She nodded. He walked over to a mini fridge in the corner of his unit and pulled out a Coke and a Snickers bar. "It's not much, but it'll hold you over." Lena took them and ate slowly, her eyes never leaving the entrance to the storage facility. Are they going to hurt Marcus? Only if he gives them a reason to. What if he runs? Then they'll catch him. She thought about that for a moment. My real mom used to tell me that bad people always get what's coming to them. But I've seen a lot of bad people and nothing ever happens to them. Wade sat down on the concrete next to her. "Your mom was right. It just takes longer than it should sometimes." "How long?" "Tonight," Wade said. "Tonight it happens." Marcus Holt was sitting in his recliner, watching a rerun of CSI when he heard the sound. At first he thought it was thunder, distant, rolling, getting closer. But then he realized it wasn't thunder. It was engines. He stood up and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain. His trailer sat at the back of the Mesa Verde mobile home park, surrounded by chain-link fence and overgrown oleander bushes. The only way in was through the front gate, and that gate was always locked after 10 p.m., but tonight the gate was open, and coming through it was a river of headlights. Marcus felt his stomach drop. He counted 10 bikes, then 20. Then he stopped counting because they just kept coming, filling the narrow streets between trailers, their engines creating a wall of sound that vibrated through the thin walls of his home. He grabbed his phone and dialed a number. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. "Yeah?" A man's voice, cautious. "It's Marcus. We got a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind with about 100 motorcycles outside my house." There was a pause. "The girl? She ran. I don't know where she went, but somebody found her. And now they're here. Get rid of the evidence. Do it now. I'll make some calls." The line went dead. Marcus looked toward the basement door. He could hear movement down there, the kids shifting on their blankets, the quiet rattle of chains. He needed to move them, fast. But when he opened the front door to check the street, he found himself staring at 80 men in leather vests, standing in formation across his yard. In the center was a man built like a tank, with a gray beard and eyes that looked like they'd seen hell and walked out unimpressed. "Marcus Holt?" the man said. Marcus tried to keep his voice steady. "Who's asking?" "Name's Razor McKenzie, president of the Hells Angels Bakersfield chapter. We're here about some kids you got locked in your basement." "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a basement." Razor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "That's funny, because we got a little girl who says otherwise, and you know what? I believe her more than I believe you." Marcus's hand moved toward the waistband of his jeans, where he kept a .38 Special. But before he could reach it, 2 riders stepped forward and grabbed his arms, twisting them behind his back. He struggled, but they were stronger, and there were 80 of them. "Let me go! You can't do this! I'll sue every one of you!" Razor walked up the steps and stood inches from Marcus's face. "You can sue us after you explain to the cops why you got kids chained up like dogs." "They're not chained. They're—" "Save it." Razor looked at the 2 riders holding Marcus. "Keep him here. Don't let him move. Don't let him make phone calls. And if he tries to run, break his legs." The men nodded. Razor turned to the rest of the club. 4 of you come with me. The rest of you form a perimeter. Nobody in, nobody out. They moved as one unit, surrounding the trailer, while Razor and 4 others kicked in the front door. Marcus screamed something about illegal entry and rights and lawyers, but nobody was listening. Inside, the trailer was exactly what Razor expected. Filthy, cluttered, the air thick with the smell of cigarettes and rotting food. They found the basement door behind a false panel in the kitchen, secured with a padlock. One of the riders, a man named Brick, who'd been a welder before joining the club, pulled out a bolt cutter and snapped the lock in 2. The door swung open. Concrete steps leading down into darkness. Razor flicked on a flashlight and descended. The basement was worse than Lena had described. 3 children sat on the floor, their ankles chained to a metal pipe running along the wall. The oldest, a girl around 12, looked up at Razor with hollow eyes. The boy with the scar was crying quietly. The blonde girl didn't react at all, just stared straight ahead. "It's okay," Razor said gently. "We're getting you out of here." Brick came down with the bolt cutters and started working on the chains. One by one, they snapped open. The kids didn't move at first, like they didn't believe they were really free. Then the boy stood up and ran to Razor, wrapping his arms around his leg. Razor looked at the 12-year-old. "What's your name?" "Sophie." "How long you been down here, Sophie?" "I don't know, a long time, maybe 2 months." "Where's the 4th kid?" Sophie's face went pale. "Marcus took her." "Took her where?" "I don't know, she was here yesterday, and then she wasn't." Razor felt rage building in his chest, the kind of rage that made men do things they regretted later. But he pushed it down. This wasn't about revenge. This was about getting these kids safe. "All right, let's move." They carried the children up the stairs and out into the night. The kids blinked in the light of 80 motorcycle headlights, their faces streaked with dirt and tears. Razor pulled out his phone and called 911. "This is Razor Mackenzie. I'm at 23 Mesa Verde Drive, Bakersfield. We've got 3 children who've been held captive and 1 suspect in custody. You need to send every unit you got and call Child Protective Services. These kids need medical attention now." The dispatcher started asking questions, but Razor cut her off. "Just send everybody. We'll explain when you get here." He hung up and looked at Marcus, who was still being held by the 2 riders. "Where's the 4th kid?" Marcus said nothing. Razor walked over and grabbed him by the collar. "I asked you a question. I want a lawyer. You'll get one after you tell me where that girl is." Marcus smiled, a sick, twisted smile that made Razor want to put his fist through the man's face. "You think I'm the only one? You think shutting me down changes anything? There's a whole network. You just kicked a hornet's nest, old man." Razor heard sirens in the distance, getting closer. He released Marcus and stepped back, his hands shaking with the effort of not breaking the man's jaw. "Good," Razor said quietly. "I hope there's a network, because now we know what we're hunting." The Bakersfield Police Department arrived in force. 6 patrol cars, 2 detectives, and a Child Protective Services van. By 1:30 a.m., the trailer park looked like a crime scene from a movie. Yellow tape, flashing lights, neighbors standing on their porches in bathrobes, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. Detective Sarah Voss was the lead investigator. She was 42, 20 years on the force, and she'd seen enough to know that when 80 bikers showed up at a location, things were either very right or very wrong. Tonight, it seemed like both. She walked over to where Razor was standing, his arms crossed, watching as paramedics loaded the 3 children into an ambulance. "You want to tell me what happened here?" Razor gave her the short version, the girl showing up at the storage facility, what she'd told them, what they'd found in the basement. Voss listened without interrupting, taking notes on a small pad. When he finished, she looked up. "And Marcus Holt? Sitting in the back of one of your cruisers. Hasn't said a word since we handed him over. You didn't touch him? Wanted to? Didn't." Voss studied Razor's face, looking for signs of a lie. She didn't find any. "All right, I'm going to need statements from everyone who entered that house, and I need to talk to the girl, Lena. She's at the storage facility with one of my guys. I'll have him bring her here." Voss nodded and walked toward the trailer. Razor pulled out his phone and called Wade. "Bring the kid. Cops want to talk to her." "She okay to do that?" "She's the only witness who saw everything. She doesn't have a choice." Wade arrived 15 minutes later on his bike, Lena, sitting in front of him, wrapped in his leather jacket. The jacket was so big on her it looked like a blanket. She climbed off and looked around at the police cars, the ambulance, the crowd of people. "Is Marcus going to jail?" she asked. "Yeah," Wade said, "for a long time." Detective Voss approached and knelt down. "Hi, Lena, I'm Detective Voss. I need to ask you some questions about what you saw tonight. Is that okay?" Lena looked at Wade, who nodded. "It's okay. Tell her the truth." For the next hour, Lena sat in the back of Voss's unmarked car, recounting everything she'd seen. The detective recorded it all, her expression growing darker with each detail. When they finished, Voss stepped out and lit a cigarette, something she'd quit 3 years ago but kept a pack for nights like this. Razor walked over. "What's the verdict?" "The verdict is we've got enough to put Holt away for 20 years. Maybe more if we can prove the other kids were trafficked." She took a drag and exhaled slowly. "But there's a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Holt made a phone call before we got here. We pulled his cell records. The number he dialed belongs to a man named Richard Kane. You know that name?" Razor's jaw tightened. "Yeah, I know it. Richard Kane was a lawyer in Fresno with a reputation for getting people off on technicalities. He also had connections to several foster care agencies across Central California. If Kane was involved, this wasn't just about one man abusing kids. This was organized." "How deep does this go?" Razor asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Voss dropped her cigarette and crushed it under her boot. "In the meantime, I need your club to back off. This is a police investigation now. We found those kids, not you, and I'm grateful. But if you keep pushing, you're going to compromise the case. Defense lawyers will claim evidence was tampered with, that confessions were coerced. I can't let that happen." Razor wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. "Fine, we'll back off, but if you need us, I'll call." Voss walked back toward the trailer, leaving Razor standing alone in the parking lot. Wade came over, Lena still holding his hand. "What now?" "Now we wait," Razor said, "and hope the system does its job." But even as he said it, Razor didn't believe it. The system had failed these kids once already. What made him think it wouldn't fail them again? 3 days later, Marcus Holt made bail. The news hit like a sledgehammer. Razor got the call from Detective Voss at 6 a.m., her voice tight with frustration. Kane posted the $200,000. Holt walked out of county jail an hour ago. How the hell did a foster parent afford that kind of bail? He didn't. Kane paid it. And before you ask, yes, it's legal. And no, there's nothing I can do about it. Razor sat on the edge of his bed, his hand gripping the phone so hard his knuckles went white. "Where is he now?" "I don't know. He's supposed to check in with his probation officer, but my guess is he's already gone. These guys don't stick around when they know we're building a case. What about the kids? They safe?" "They're in protective custody, different locations. We're not taking any chances." Razor hung up and sat there in the silence of his bedroom. His wife, Linda, was still asleep beside him. She'd been with him for 34 years, through the good times and the bad. She knew what he was thinking before he said it. "Don't do anything stupid, Ray," she murmured, without opening her eyes. She only called him Ray when she was serious. "I'm not planning to." "You're a terrible liar." Razor got dressed and headed to the clubhouse. By the time he arrived, word had already spread. 40 members were waiting for him, their faces grim. Wade spoke first. "Tell me this is a bad joke." "It's not." "Then we need to find him before he disappears." Razor shook his head. "Voss made it clear. We step out of line, we blow the case, and there's more kids out there. This isn't just about Holt anymore." "So what do we do?" "Nothing. We do what we're good at. We watch. We listen. And when the time comes, we move." But watching wasn't easy. Over the next 2 weeks, Razor's contacts in law enforcement fed him bits of information. Richard Kane was under investigation for fraud. 3 other foster parents in Kern County had been flagged for suspicious activity. The FBI was getting involved, looking into a possible interstate trafficking ring, and Marcus Holt had vanished. No credit card activity, no phone pings, no sightings. It was like he'd walked off the edge of the earth. Lena stayed with a temporary foster family in Bakersfield, a retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Pacheco who lived alone with 2 cats. Wade visited twice a week, bringing her books and candy and occasionally letting her sit on his bike in the driveway. She never asked about Marcus. She didn't need to. She could see it in Wade's eyes every time he showed up. They hadn't found him yet. On the 16th day, Razor got a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something told him to pick up. "Yeah, Mr. Mackenzie," a woman's voice, shaky, scared. "Who's this?" "My name is Jennifer Cole. I used to work for Richard Kane. I was his paralegal. I need to talk to you." Razor sat up straight. "Where are you?" "A motel in Fresno. The Budget Inn off Highway 99, room 14. Please come alone. If he finds out I called you." The line went dead. Razor grabbed his keys and rode north, pushing the Harley to 80 on the open highway. He reached Fresno in 45 minutes and pulled into the motel parking lot just after sunset. Room 14 was on the ground floor, the curtains drawn tight. He knocked twice. "It's Razor." The door opened a crack, and a woman peered out. She was in her 30s, blonde hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Come in, quick." Razor stepped inside. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener. Jennifer locked the door behind him and sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling. "I don't have much time," she said. "Kane knows I took files. If he finds me before I get them to the cops." "What files?" She pulled a laptop out of a duffel bag and opened it. Everything. Names, addresses, bank transfers. Kane's been running this operation for 8 years. He recruits foster parents, pays them to take in kids, and then moves the kids through a network. Some get adopted illegally. Others, her voice trailed off. Others what? Disappear. Razor felt his blood turn cold. "How many?" "At least 40 that I can confirm. Maybe more." She turned the laptop toward him. On the screen was a spreadsheet with rows of names, dates, and dollar amounts. Razor recognized some of the names. Marcus Holt was near the top. But there were others, too. Foster parents, social workers, even a county judge. "Why are you telling me this?" Razor asked. "Because the cops won't move fast enough. Kane has people inside the system. If I go to them, he'll know before I finish giving my statement. But you," she looked at him, "you can do something they can't." Razor stared at the screen. This was bigger than he'd thought. Bigger than Marcus Holt or Richard Kane. This was a machine grinding up kids and spitting out money. "Where's Holt now?" Jennifer clicked on a file. A photo appeared. Marcus Holt standing outside a house in Modesto, talking to another man. The timestamp was from yesterday. "He's hiding at a safe house. Kane's keeping him there until the heat dies down." Razor memorized the address. "You got somewhere safe to go?" "I have a sister in Oregon. I'm leaving tonight." "Good. Get those files to the FBI. Don't stop until you do." Jennifer nodded and closed the laptop. "What are you going to do?" Razor stood up and walked to the door. "What I should have done 3 weeks ago." The house in Modesto was a single-story bungalow on a quiet street lined with oak trees. It looked like every other house on the block. Neat lawn, white picket fence, American flag hanging from the porch. The kind of place where nobody asked questions because nobody expected trouble. Razor and 12 other members arrived at 2 a.m. No engines this time. They'd driven trucks and vans, parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot. This wasn't about making a statement. This was about ending something. They surrounded the house in silence. Razor tried the front door. Locked. He nodded to Brick, who pulled out a pry bar and jammed it into the frame. The door splintered open with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. Inside, the house was dark. Razor clicked on a flashlight and swept it across the living room. Empty beer cans, pizza boxes. The TV was still on, playing infomercials with the sound muted. Then he heard it. Footsteps upstairs. Running. "Go!" Razor said. 4 members rushed up the stairs. There was a crash, a shout, and then silence. Razor followed and found Marcus Holt pinned to the floor of a bedroom, his face pressed into the carpet. 2 riders holding him down. Marcus was screaming about rights and lawyers and illegal entry, but Razor didn't care. He knelt down and grabbed Marcus by the hair, forcing him to look up. "Where's the fourth kid?" Razor said quietly. "I don't know what you're—" Razor slammed his face back into the floor. "Wrong answer. Where is she?" Marcus coughed, blood trickling from his nose. "She's gone. Kane moved her. I don't know where." "You're lying." "I'm not. He doesn't tell me everything. He just pays me and tells me what to do." Razor felt something inside him snap. He wanted to hurt this man, wanted to make him feel every ounce of pain those kids had felt. But then he heard a voice in his head, Linda's voice, telling him not to do anything stupid. He stood up and pulled out his phone. He dialed 911 and put it on speaker. "This is Razor Mackenzie. I'm at 1847 Sycamore Drive in Modesto. I've got Marcus Holt in custody. He's wanted for child trafficking. Send units now." The dispatcher started asking questions, but Razor hung up. He looked at the two riders holding Marcus. "Keep him here until the cops show." Then he walked downstairs and out into the night. Wade was waiting by the trucks, his arms crossed. "We got him?" Wade asked. "Yeah." "What about the other kid?" Razor shook his head. "Still missing." They stood there in silence, listening to the sirens approaching in the distance. Razor thought about Lena, safe at Mrs. Pacheco's house, thought about the 3 kids they'd pulled out of that basement, thought about the 40 names on Jennifer Cole's spreadsheet they'd won tonight. But the war wasn't over. 6 months later, Richard Kane was arrested by the FBI. The trial lasted 3 weeks. 27 people were indicted, including 4 social workers, 2 county officials, and 11 foster parents. Marcus Holt pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to 40 years without parole. The 4th child, a 9-year-old girl named Melissa, was found in Nevada, living with a couple who'd paid $50,000 for her. She was returned to her biological grandmother in Sacramento. Lena was adopted by Mrs. Pacheco. On her 8th birthday, Wade showed up with a present. A small leather jacket with a patch on the back that read, "Honorary Angel." Lena asked if that meant she could ride motorcycles when she grew up. Wade said only if she promised to be smarter than him. She promised. And on quiet nights, when the clubhouse was empty and the roads were dark, Razor would sit on his bike and think about the kids they'd saved, and the ones they hadn't. The system was broken. It always had been. But sometimes, just sometimes, good people with loud motorcycles could fix what the system couldn't. That had to be enough.